So many of you are using benchmarks already. Many of you have your own success stories to tell about benchmarks or your own frustrations. But certainly elemental to progressing with benchmark programs would be that you need to make certain that your own metrics are accurate, that the measurements that you're taking, the way you're measuring yourself on your delivery, your customer satisfaction, performance, and characteristics that are important to how you measure yourself are accurate, objective, and appropriate. Make sure that you understand the benchmark that you're using. Remember, you do not need to have a benchmark that has your competition in it. More often, you're risking your own good decision making by only restricting yourself to your competitors. Once you have selected a benchmark that you see as useful and important to you, then compare your performance to the benchmark. Then make an adjustment, revise a process, or improve a delivery, and then compare again. And continually do that. It is an iterative process to use the measurements that you collect and the comparative performance to benchmarks and the community around you. So, in closing, what I would say is that benchmarks, even the most highly accurate benchmarks, are tools. They're just tools, and benchmarks do not make decisions. Managers make decisions. But benchmarks give you insight. They make you smarter. They help you understand what you have to offer, and by applying what they can teach you, instruct you to you, or reveal to you within their own context is powerful and important. So use benchmarks and make better decisions.
Wow, Jean, that was a lot of great information about how to use benchmarks to make decisions. And there's several folks that had some questions, and would you be open to taking a couple questions?
Of course, thank you.
Okay. Well, one of the questions was, what's the one most important characteristic of a good benchmark if you had to narrow it down to just one characteristic?
I think that the number one characteristic that you should understand as you assess benchmarks that you're considering applying in your environment is their statistical validity. How is the data collected? Is it truly in an unbiased, objective format? Are each element of or elements of the data as it's being built up into a benchmark, is it being collected in a truly statistical and scientific manner? That way, what you have is a measurement, a metric that you can consider to be reliable, and then you can place your focus on the next level of using that benchmark, and that is being attentive to your deficiencies or your successes over that benchmark number.
That's insightful. Thank you for that. I have another question here too that pertains to managers. And specifically, the person was saying, my manager won't give any credibility to a benchmark that doesn't have any of our quote arch rivals in it. What should I do in that type of situation was another question from a participant.
Well, it's not unusual for executives to say that I want a benchmark and I want to compare myself to all of my peers, or just the individuals that I would consider to be my arch rivals or my most competitive individuals. However, the reality is that the customers that you serve are probably not experiencing the service that your competition is delivering. More importantly, even if they are experiencing service from that organization or using or have used those products in the past, the fact is that their expectations continue to be set by other characteristics and other products, other experiences in the market. So, for instance, if you were providing a product in the security basis, in a security type of software environment, what's more important is to understand what's going on in peripheral companies and how they're setting expectations.
Okay, that's very helpful. And do you have time for a couple more questions?
Sure.
All right. So another question that we have is, What if you're at the most, what if you're most of the time at the top of the class? What is your aim then? What are the options that are in front of you if you're at the top of the benchmark, I presume?
Well, I don't think I've ever met a service executive who doesn't want to do better all the time. And perhaps that's what made him or her a successful service executive in the first place, is that desire to serve the customer and do the best they possibly can with the resources. The reality is today in this economy is that we may not have the resources to go better and better, higher and higher. That it may not be possible and it may not be economically feasible to spend more, to gain more, to go beyond and beyond and beyond. So even by performing at the top of your level and maybe performing on a consistent basis there, that measurement that continued performance might be your objective. So rather than your objective being how do I improve beyond this, how do I go further, perhaps your objective is more how do I maintain this position. Secondly, there's a great opportunity to understand those customers that are taking you to the top of that bar, and whether or not those customers are actually improving your bottom revenue or your bottom line. So by being selective to the characteristics of your success, and being able to slice that down to the sub-characteristics that actually affect your revenue, then you can focus on those individuals or those fine lines, because now your next opportunity is to maintain or increase the revenue of those accounts.
Interesting. That's very helpful. I guess the last question that we have for you is, in regard, like you said before, with times like this, what should we expect to pay for a good benchmark, and how do we budget for participating in a benchmarking program?
Well, there are all kinds of benchmarks out there, and again, if you really understand what the benchmark has to offer, there may be benchmarks that are there for free. Certainly, there are amazing studies and very credible organizations that provide high-level benchmarking all the time, but they're $50,000, $100,000, whatever their fees are, may be out of line for you. Remember that there are a lot of organizations that are doing some very, very valid and appropriate studies. Industry associations that give this information for free, for example. One example is CompTIA, the Computing Technology Industry Association, which is the largest IT trade association in the world. And what they do is they actually have a program in which Service 800 is very acquainted, where those individuals who participate in that program get a free benchmark, and that benchmark is very readily available. So it's certainly not the cost of the benchmark. It is more the benchmark and how it's going to fit what your requirements are, and make the biggest difference for you as you try to compare yourself to your industry and to ultimately make your best next decision.
Wow. Well, I think that's and kind of out of respect for time, Jean, and your time specifically, I thank you for making the time to be here with us today and take all these questions from the audience. And so thank you very much for that. And then what we'll be doing for everyone that's on the line, thanks for participating in today's webinar. There will be another one coming up in June where we'll be talking about whether companies should conduct CSAT surveys internally, or whether it's something that they should be looking to an outside partner to evaluate for them. So thank you again, Jean, for your time, and thank you everyone for attending, and have a great day. Bye-bye.